So welcome to this webinar about Tuva's new library of data sets. I'll introduce myself and then I'll let Annette introduce herself. I'm Molly Schaffler. I'm a Tuva science consultant and I'm an assistant research professor at the University of Maine Climate Change Institute and Center for Research in STEM Education. Annette, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Annette Brickley, also a science content consultant for Tuva. I work for myself. I do a lot of education outreach. My own little personal company is Stemming the Gaps, and I just work to make science and now mostly data accessible to students and teachers.
Great. Okay, before we get started, well, many of our data sets come from these kinds of organizations and agencies, data publicly available online. But before we get started, we'd like to have you respond to 2 survey questions. We just want to learn a little more about who's here. Your responses are anonymous, and Annette is going to start the poll, and you should see it on your screen there. And so just answer. You may need to scroll down and see the second question. And when we see responses look like they're slowing down, we'll close the survey. We have 6 out of 7, maybe one more. There, it looks like we have 100% participation. Annette, you want to end the poll and share the results?
I will. So it looks like we have the informal educators win the race today with classroom teachers, curriculum developers, and others.
Nice mix.
Defined as an other. And we have a nice normal distribution of experience with accessing data sets online, with some success and some competence or great competence. So, and 2 on either end. So great. This is really good to know, and we hope to help you along in any place that you put yourself.
This is helpful. So if you have questions along the way, why don't you put them in the chat and we'll try to catch them. I have to remember to actually show the chat. Let me put this on my other screen here. And I hope I've gotten that out of the way on the poll. Okay.
Good.
All right. Let me scroll ahead here. Oops. Oh, yeah. So in setting up Tuva's dataset library, which we'll give you a tour of shortly, we wanted to start with these 3 guiding points that we always have in mind as we develop stuff at Tuva. And for the dataset library, we aim for learner agency. We're hoping to allow learners to make choice and follow individual paths of inquiry. We strive for ease of use and learning, visual representations of concepts, and accessibility and inclusivity. So these are always, we have these in the back of our mind as we're creating data sets and sorting them out in our library. So building data skills is key to most of those tenets, especially giving learners agency. And data sets are the currency of building those data skills. So we download data from many of those agencies and organizations that were on the first slide. We curate it so it's more accessible, meaningful, and manageable. And so students can turn the data into something that they can understand. Data come to us in spreadsheets, and it's often really hard to make any sense of data in that format. So, and oftentimes the data sets that we get have codes for headers. They have way more data than most students need to tell a story or make sense of something. So that's what we spend our time doing, curating these data sets so that they're useful to students. So in this next hour, we're going to talk about where to find data, that is, how to use Tuva's Dataset Library, and then a little bit about what can students do with data. So that's our plan for the next hour or so. We'll demonstrate briefly Tuva's new tool for creating your own activity in any data set that's in the Dataset Library. So first of all, where to find data. It is very time consuming to find data online and curate it so that it's accessible for data beginners. We separated the data sets out into their own library from the rest of Tuva's content because data sets aren't necessarily confined to just one discipline area or grade band. They often require different search criteria other than just types of content, activities, or data stories or lessons. And many educators have their own ideas about how to use a data set, and we wanted to make that, facilitate that and make it easy to find data sets and create your own activities for them. So I'm going to demonstrate here, and let me, let's see. I want to pause my screen sharing, which is now looking a little different than what it did. So I am just going to go to this tab here, and I'm going to resize this frame so you can see, hopefully.
We're seeing your dashboard.
You should see my dashboard. Does that look about right?
Yep.
So we'll start from your dashboard. And the data sets used to be in, everything was in this content library, but now we have a data set library. And if you pull that menu down, you'll see my data sets. And that's where you go to find the data sets that you've uploaded. But here are Tuva data sets. And I think currently there's over 300 and must be, it's 300, it's almost 400 data sets in here now. So all of the material, these familiar blocks, if you've been using Tuva, these blocks will be a little bit familiar, but all of the data sets are here. There are no activities or anything. And probably the most direct way to find a data set that you might have in mind is to use this search bar up here and search as you would for any keyword. So somebody, is there something you'd like to search for? Is there a data set just off the top of your head? What should we try to search for here? You can put it in the chat, whatever topic you like. Roller coasters. All right, we'll type in roller coasters, and I see a question there, which we'll get to in a second. I have to be able to spell. And here we get several data sets that we have about roller coasters, including one of them in Spanish. What about any other? This is probably the way you'll search for data sets most often. Let's try it one more. Climate. Earthquakes. We have a lot of choices here. So we have a lot of data sets about climate, and there they are. You can scroll down to the bottom, but there's a lot of choices here. Now over here in the data set block, we have a designation of whether it's premium or free. We have the title of the data set, and then a brief description of what each case is. And we try to give enough information there so you can get a sense of what kind of information is there, more than just each case is a country. The source of the data set, how many cases it has, so a sense of the size, how many attributes it has, and if it has any activities, how many activities. It'll also show here some data sets. We've prepared a data set guide, and that will appear here if that data set has one. And then miscellaneous other tags. You can bookmark the data set and save it as that you can come back to. And at the top, you can search for your bookmarks there. Oops, I just removed that bookmark. I had it bookmarked, but you should be able to look for your bookmarks. This create activity button, we're going to talk about in a little bit. So let's go back to the Dataset Library page. You can also look at all the free data sets. My bookmarks are listed there. You can look at the most recent ones or ones that have been most popular. You can also look in the archives, and these are data sets that we've archived for one reason or another. It's maybe out of date, maybe we've replaced it with a better one, maybe we found problems with it, whatever reason. These are all archived data sets, so you can see that this is a very dynamic process. We're trying to keep data sets current, and let's see, how do I go back to all data sets? So now over here on the left are filters. So you can filter data sets for ones that we've featured. Every 2 weeks, we feature some content for free. And if there are data sets associated with that content, those will be free also. So these are, if you want to check in and see what's free these 2 weeks, these are the ones. We also keep track of the current news cycle, and if you want to see what's currently in the news, these data sets relate to current news items. Subject area, we no longer break this data sets into either math or science, because we realize that data sets can really be used in different disciplines in different ways. And so we broke them down by broad subject areas, but not specifically math or science. This check here, math data sets, these are data sets that we generally have a lot of math activities for, but it also includes data sets that we would call maybe content free. So data sets that aren't really about a subject area. It might be the weights of pennies or M&Ms. They don't really fit into any of these, but that's a place where you can find some of our content-free data sets. Type of data is, you can isolate experimental data sets. So these are all data sets that have an experimental design involved, or observational data. And this is a lot of our just monitoring and earth science type data sets are observational data. So modeled data, survey data, that includes some of the surveys, census data and different surveys. So that's a way to sort data that you might want to, again, focus on a particular kind of learning for your students. This data set properties is where, as a math, if you're looking for particular math lessons or concepts to teach, this is where you might go for some of those math ideas. If you want to find data sets that have a positive correlation, these are all going to have two numeric variables or attributes, and they're all going to, in some form or other, in some part of them, have an example of a positive correlation. If you want to find skewed data, you can click on skewed data and so forth. So that's I think probably of most interest to math teachers or anyone teaching a specific math data skill. The rest of these are sorted by data set size. If you want a big data set or something under a certain size, grade band. We do tag some data sets with a grade band if they're clearly a more complex data set that's really mostly appropriate for high school or over. We might tag that for 9 to 12, but that could mean undergraduate as well. Or if it's a particularly simple data set that's really targeting elementary students, we would tag it for 3 to 5. So now place or region, we do want to try to highlight data sets that focus on a particular local area. This isn't a very robust sorting right now, but we do have data sets that are currently tagged for these particular states. It's just what we have. So we'll add stuff as we go and add more locations here, but that's another way to search for data sets. And then finally, language. We do have data sets in different languages, English, Spanish, and Arabic at the moment. So those are the filters that you can use to search for data sets. Annette, is there anything else you can think of that I missed here? You're muted.
Blocking out the sounds of my dog. Yeah, no, I think that was great, Molly. So we can do a quick exchange of slides while we.
Yeah, so Annette's setting that up. I'll just say, if anybody has any questions, I will take a look at the chat. And this yellow box, it just gives you a little more information about the data sets. I've got some questions here, so let me know, Annette, when you're ready.
Okay.
Let's see. Oops, we're ready for Annette. So I'm going to keep track of those questions and we will have time at the end for getting at those.
Yeah, and I've answered several of Mahmoud's questions in the chat.
Okay, great.
We can certainly take more questions at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk about, so Molly gave the overview of kind of what the data sets are, how you can dive into the data sets, how you can find what you need. But we also want to share some ideas about what you might do with these data sets with your students, because that is one of our passions in creating content to help students start to develop their skills, to further build their skills in data literacy. So building data skills. What might that look like? Well, there's a continuum of where you might want to be with your students, where your students may be in coming to you. So in thinking about building data skills, there are guided steps where you're really teaching them along the way how to drag and drop, what to put on which axis, what type of graph to choose, what types of analytical features you might add to help make that data story more visual to them and help it pop out with an explanation that they could make. But it could all go all the way to, we provide this data set library explicitly so that you can allow open exploration. We're hoping that the data sets that we provide breed curiosity, and that the students are going to want to explore and see what the data look like when they put them into some type of a graph form. So along that continuum, there are all kinds of options. And again, this is part of when Molly showed the slide of the tenets of what we build and why and what we provide. It's really this is the tenet where learners can determine their individual path of inquiry. And so we hope that what you can find within the Tuva tool is a balance where students can figure out where they need to be, and that you can also create different levels for them to openly explore. So one of the tools that we provide to help you create either some of the stepwise guided or even student-directed inquiry, we have added a tool with this dataset library where you can create activities. So much like the ones that you will find for data sets that we have created and provided, we know that teachers love to customize and create their own. So we've built in this activity builder or button that you can see next to any of the data sets, which is create an activity. So I'm going to step through just a little bit of how to do that. And if that's an interest to you and you have questions, we can certainly provide more resources for that. Let me flip. Okay, so you should be seeing now my Tuva window, which is, let me step back to how I got in here. So we're looking in the dataset library. As I said, you see that create activity button next to any of them. When I click on that create activity button, it's going to open this right-hand side panel. It's going to open the data set, and now I have options. So to this particular data set was uploaded just last week. It's about the Salinas River that was flooding with the potential of turning Monterey Peninsula into an island. So this is one of our very recent data sets, but it allows students to explore. But maybe you want a particular way for your students to explore it. So you'd start populating this activity builder. You can give it your own title. I've typed one in here, raising questions, rising water. Anything that has an asterisk next to it is required before you can move on to the next step. If there's no asterisk, you can leave it blank, or you can add something that will guide your students along the way. So I've put a few things in there. I've reminded for myself what the learning objective is. And you notice that each time I click next in that activity builder, it's actively saving. So you're not going to lose what you've created when you go on to the next step. I put in a little student introduction here. Again, when I click next, you see that it's saving. And then I get to where I can start to add some questions. And I could add more instructions, just tell the students what I would like them to do with the graph, with the data. It's just scattered data sets, mixed up cases at this point. So I could give them instruction on what to do first, or I could dive right into adding a question. If I select add a question, we've provided 4 different formats for questions. And this is because, we're thinking sometimes you want to ask a very short answer question. You just want to know that your students are oriented to what they're seeing on the graph. And so I might just ask something, a short answer question here is, what was the maximum gauge height reached along the river? So they may need to figure out what they're going to graph. And maybe they're just doing it by station name, because all they're going is for a maximum, and they can find the value and type in the answer. So I've got an idea what I want them to do, but maybe I want to make it one of my other options was a multiple answer question, a list of options allowing students to select multiple answers, much like you did for the poll. In that case, I can put in the question and I can enter the possible answers. And I'm also going to provide the checkboxes for the answers that I hope that they will choose, or they'll write answers when I add that step, so that they can get some feedback along the way. Adding step, it will save and give me more options. When I'm ready to save my activity and I'm ready to, or I just run out of time in my day, up here at the top, I have some options to either exit, in which case it will save when I exit, or I can publish. If I choose to publish it, it's going to go to my dashboard and I can assign it to my students. Anything you create within this activity builder is private to yourself. It's not going out onto our platform. It remains within your dashboard for you to use as you choose at any time along the way. When I exit, I can exit without saving, or I can save and exit. In this case, I'm not going to save it because I already have this activity. Okay. Let's go back to our slides. Does anybody have any, if you have any questions about the activity builder or what I just demonstrated, just go ahead and put them in the chat, or if it's a burning question and you want to ask it out loud, we can pause for just a minute.
And I should also say that we will have a future webinar or some sort of session on strategies for building your own activity, because that's really a whole session by itself. We really just wanted to introduce you to the tool that lets you know that it's here.
Okay, I'm going to let Molly answer that question in the chat while I go on. Okay. Customizing, creating activities. What do you, I mean, you can have lots of different pedagogical goals when you're creating activities or using data sets that we're providing. And these are just a few of them. It might be because you're really looking at one part of the 5E. It's because there's been a current event like the flooding in California, and you'd like your students to pull something out from that current event. Maybe you're really working on some of the statistical skills for an advanced placement exam, and you know that there's going to be some graph interpretation. So we're hoping, we know that you have more needs than what we can possibly fill on our own. So again, thinking about how you can use data sets, and these are just a few of the ideas, but let's play with this and solidify this in our heads just a little bit. Okay, so we're going to have you take a look at on the platform to go into, let's see if I can put this link in the chat. And we want you to go ahead and open up, click on the link that's in the chat, which will take you to the website, and it should open up this data set for you. That's about NFL football helmet physics. And once you've done that, if you can just give a got it or something in the chat so that we know you're there. And just take a look at the data set. Just get a little bit familiar with what's there. We got one got it. We got another got it. Another one. Okay, we've got 4 of us in, 5 of us in. I know Colleen knows how to get there. Okay, so while you're looking at this data set, feel free to play around a little bit. The platform is designed for play. Think about how students might be able to use this data set either in an engagement activity or to explore some content that you're wanting them, or further explain, to elaborate, or even you could use it as an evaluate, or they could use it to evaluate some ideas. So think about anywhere this data set could be directed towards one of the 5Es. And when you have an idea, just share that in the chat. Could be a question. It could be, I'll be quiet and I'll let you think. All right, Molly's given us an excellent example. She might use it as an explore. Is there a difference between two helmet designs? So maybe they've done an engineering and design problem. And you're looking for, well, we need some data behind an engineering and design. How could we decide which helmet was better?
And that could also be an evaluate kind of question. Which helmet is best for reducing the severity of head injuries and why?
And Ian, where would you put that? Would you make that, you think it would be a good engage? Do you think it would be any sense of which 5E you might slot that into for a group of students? Use it to build intuition about mapping data to properties for visualization. So that's, as I'm reading that, Mahmoud, as a more, well, it could be an elaborate, but if you're teaching data literacy or if you're focused on math concepts. Okay, well, hopefully, keeping a lens like this about what are the possibilities for a data set that we want, to think wildly and think openly about where you can fit a data set in, which is then, of course, going to guide how you design your activity, what kinds of questions you're putting to the students, whether you're leaving it open-ended because you want them to elaborate, or whether you're just using it as an attention getter and you want to talk about, impact or velocity and momentum. And so this is an engage activity to talk about football helmets and injuries. So lots of different options. And this is just a way to seed those ideas.
And I think one of the purposes here is to realize that you can have control over what kinds of questions you want your students to really engage with. And so, yeah, if it's a particular skill, you can ask questions about that. If it's a particular kind of thinking, you can ask questions that prompt that. But this really puts you in control of what you want your students to focus on.
Okay, yeah, Mahmoud, I like that. Now I understand more what you're saying, that the darker, using color to represent value. So it could be darker shades, lighter shades to correspond to numerical values. I've often used that when I'm talking about satellite images to talk about how color is assigned to a number to give to mean value. So yeah, just talking about visualization tactics and how we see numbers in different ways. Excellent. All right. So just one more little practice with this and thinking about another way to use the NFL football helmet physics data set. What's a claim that you think students might make about football helmets and physics, even if they're just glancing through it, what the attributes are? What's like, make a claim statement that you think they might like to make, even without exploring the data. And again, put it in the chat.
Yeah.
Or if you like to phrase your claim as a question, you can do that too. Okay. So claim, impact location is related to the severity of the impact. Excellent. So getting down to where on the head is the impact happening and how does that relate to the severity. All right, Katie, not all football helmets provide equal protection. So just looking at, you got 2 different types of helmets to compare.
Nice.
All right. So in thinking about these, helmets don't protect head injuries. Yeah, there's this. So then an idea if you're working within, if one of your learning goals is I really want my students to practice on this claim, evidence, and reasoning, you may provide them with a guiding question. You may just have them come up with a claim and look for the evidence, and structure your activity so that they're exploring in different ways openly. You can also pose questions and say which of these questions can be answered and which of them can't be answered using these data. And so developing these claim, evidence, and reasoning skills, any one part or all 3 parts of building this CER practice. Great. Okay.
So,
all right, Molly, I think we have enough time for this. Did you want to add?
yeah, I just wanted to add one thing to really tie this back to data sets is, I mean, claim, evidence, reasoning gets a lot of bandwidth in, but often students really do have a hard time tying their claims and their reasoning to an actual visual image or graph or aspects of the graph. So I think, again, keeping data at the heart of some of these practices, these pedagogical approaches, is hard to do if you don't have a data set that really fits what you're trying to do, or that offers many different opportunities for inquiry. So when we curate data sets, we have in mind, are there lots of things students could ask here? Are there lots of ways they could explore this data set and find different stories in it, or different lines of reasoning or lines of evidence? So, so keeping data at the heart of these kinds of practices is really what we're trying to do.
And to make it easier for you.
Yeah, make it easy for you to do that.
Okay. So our last bit here in thinking about, creating and using the data sets that we're able to provide for you, in building those skills for analyzing and interpreting data, and building those mathematical skills of being able to see how numbers can represent and be evidence, or how they can model different events. In thinking about the questions that you're answering, we may start out, and I gave an example where we began with, a factual question that was just making sure that the students could find the maximum. And so they're getting more familiar, maybe diving into the data set a little bit. Sometimes we just start with questions where we're just asking them to look at the distribution. What's the minimum and maximum? What's the mean values? But to move beyond that, think about types of questions where you're asking them to describe what they see. So whether that's a see, think, wonder, notice, think, wonder, just to describe what's in the graph and what kind of a pattern is, and they may see a pattern that you don't see. How can they describe it using numbers qualitatively? How can they describe quantitatively? How can they describe it qualitatively? Like, what's its shape like? It looks like a mountain. It looks like 2 mountains. What are they starting to use? And building those description skills to fit some of the terms that are more recognizable. And, data sets aren't just about analyzing and interpreting, but when they are analyzing and interpreting, how much of the context do they know? Are they providing, do they recognize the context? Do they, are they figuring out the different ways that graphs can represent different things, using something like the graph choice chart to decide which visualization is going to be a better one? And then finally, just the questions that they can generate. Not all of the questions they generate are going to be answered by the data set that we provide, but hopefully that gets them curious enough to move beyond and do a little more research, or they start looking for other data sets that they can explore beyond. And so just keep thinking open-endedly about how students can approach it. And as they build their comfort and skill level in analyzing data and working with data sets and interpreting these visualizations, hopefully you'll see their skills grow in all kinds of other ways. So we wanted to make sure that we had time to hear back a little bit from you. So I think, Molly, I think we just, rather than even collecting in the chat, do we want to just have let people unmute themselves? And
yeah, I would vote for that. I would really like to hear from people how you envision using the dataset library, or what you're looking for in data sets, or what your ideas are for the dataset library. We at Tuva, we really work the model of see where the cows walk or the people walk, and then build the sidewalks there. So so maybe this is a chance for you to let us know what your thoughts and needs or ideas are about access to data sets. So feel free to unmute yourself. We can't see you, I don't think, but
yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, do we have to allow people to talk?
I'm not sure.
Hello.
There,
Hello.
that's great. I can see
Okay.
people now. Thanks.
One of the things that I'm interested in is ease of access for teachers. And when I say ease of access for teachers, I mean in two fronts. One, you already answered one question, this is accessible through a school network. So that's one problem that's been eliminated. And the second problem, or I won't say a problem, but the issue is when an instructor has access to a data set, what are some of the best practices or sort of best lesson activities that can be used with this data? And you seem to be providing resources for that as well. The question that I had that follows up from that is, so that if I'm a teacher and I'm in class and my students are using this, is there a way that I can see what they're doing without actually walking to each individual student? Is there like a teacher dashboard where I can sort of see what people are doing as they work through? And am I able to, inside of the class activity, put prompts where they have to enter answers to certain questions so that I can get a sense of how they're progressing along?
Yes, the answer to there's several questions buried in there. So the way Tuva works, if you haven't worked in the whole platform itself before, is you set up in your teacher dashboard, you can set up classes and assign students to a class. You can give them a code to join a class. And when you do that, you can assign them different activities and lessons. Now we've showed you the dataset library here, and that's now separated out from the rest of Tuva's content. If you go to Tuva's content library, which I think I can share my screen, but I'll just answer it verbally. If you go to Tuva's content library, you'll see that there are lots of activities and what we call data stories that the activities are associated with particular data sets. So if you open up a data set, you'll see on the right some activities that students could do, and you can assign those to your students. And when they do them, you can see on your side their responses to those activity questions. So you don't have to create your own activity for everything. There are activities that are already created in there that you can use. you can see students' responses, and then you can respond to an individual student with a personal response. You know, maybe add more, add another, try another attribute here or something like that. So you can give them little clues that's private to them. So yes, there is some interaction that way with your students. Did that get at your question? There were several questions in there, so.
Oh, no, yeah, no, they got it. I'm sorry, I have lots of questions.
Okay.
I'm a curious lad. So so I see that what you're talking about. I went into the NFL and I clicked the activity, and I can see where you can put it in there, and that looks really nice. I like that aspect of it.
Yeah, so some data sets we have created activities that will guide students, and they're usually, you know, I mean, we're thinking when we upload the data set about, you know, we're already thinking usually of an activity. We also provide with each data set, or most of the data sets, you'll find up at the top a Tuva Dataset guide, and it might give 3 examples of guiding questions that could be asked of students with that particular data set. So it's another resource we provide. And then you'll also see, and we didn't really talk about this specifically, but the other option you see at within the content library are data stories, and those are pre-written, usually 10 to 15 minute, just a few questions, probably already provided graph that we've created to get the students started, and then just a list of questions. So it's a great engage. It's a great just warm up for students to get going on a very particular topic. So data stories, very short, succinct, and activities that we've created that are longer. They might even be, some of them have parts 1 and part 2. Some of them have 4 parts, only a few. And then in the dataset library, of course, just the open data set for you to build from on your own.
So what we're aiming for here is, again, a spectrum of opportunity, from all the way from quite guided. So some of the activities have a lot of guidance in them. Put this here, drag this here, highlight this. So some are very, very directed, and others are much more open. And it's that spectrum that is really important in teaching these skills, because students are on that spectrum. Some are ready for really open-ended work with data.
And Katie, I see you had asked the question if it works on iPads. It works on iPads. It's a website, and so, you know, obviously the screen realty is a little different. We've tried to build it so that it's not too squished. That, you know, it can work on a smaller screen, and students are still able to graph. If they have a guided, you know, an activity with questions on the right-hand side, it does reduce the space that's available for the graph itself, but it's still very doable. And certainly as you do that, if you have input or feedback for us, we welcome. We're, you know, company that's been going for 10 years, but everything is still developing and changing. And it's always a question that we're asking is how can we make it even better?
I know that you said that you did the data cleaning. I'm looking, where would I find like the data dictionary to tell me what the names of the columns represent? So if I click on a data set, like I just looked at bar charts of underwater forest, where would I go to see? I know when I go in the activity now, oh, I guess the attribute names, it's sort of self-explanatory.
Yep, so you'll get the attribute name, list, all the attributes are listed in the case card. And if it's an attribute that we feel like needs a little further explanation about what it is, if you hover your, and I think Molly's going to go there as I'm talking, if you hover over the attribute, it will, a pop-up will come that explains it a little further. And then it's also possible, some of the data sets, if there's a vocabulary term that we think what is challenging, Sometimes down at the bottom, you'll see vocabulary, so that you can, so there's a definition of the term. Certainly, if you come across a data set that needs a term defined, you just use the feedback form and contact us and we'll be able to add it. But
Okay.
Molly's there showing how. So air temperature monthly mean, if it's not entirely clear what that means, you get the pop out that explains it, that it's, oh, well, it's measured 2 meters above the surface, or in this case, visible sunlight. Well, what does that really mean? So we've tried to add those as best as possible.
Okay.
The other thing that we'll do often when curating is this data set came with just pretty much, I think, probably month and year and these values, but we've separated out year and month so that students can ask the question, like, do all months have the same amount of precipitation? They could look at the data in a lot of different temporal ways. So that's, again, when we curate, we have in mind, what are the kinds of inquiries students could make here and what could they learn from it? So,
and so down here where it says add attribute, suppose I wanted to add the attribute of season. I don't see season here, but suppose I wanted to make it say summer, spring, winter, fall.
That's a great question. And that's a call, because that's easier to do in the spreadsheet when we're curating. If we think that season is going to be a useful thing, we could have done that here. You can add an attribute here, but we don't have the formulas or the internal processing ability to break certain months into certain seasons. So that would be easiest to do in the spreadsheet itself. But that's a good suggestion for this particular.
When you say in the spreadsheet itself, you mean the one that you guys build?
The one that we generated.
Okay.
It's feeding this interface here. So,
okay.
Yeah. But we do have data sets that do have spring, summer, and fall. I think the El Nino data set, and this is where I'll just demonstrate. It's probably easiest to find just by typing that. And this data set here does have, and normally I wouldn't skip over the about, because we encourage students to really get the context of a data set. That about window is important. But, oops, no, we don't here. It's in the, I guess it's in the sea surface temperature. This one does break it into 3-month periods, but it's in some data sets, we do have season here as defined by November, December, December, January, February is winter, and so forth. Of course, it's Northern Hemisphere seasons that we defined it, but that's.
Oh, so if you go to where it says table view.
Oh, yeah.
You can see it, but you can't add any formulas or anything here, right?
Not at the moment. You can't add here, and we wouldn't want you to add, because this is the data set that everybody gets. Now you could download this data set and make it the way you want it, but this is read only, because if you messed with it, then everybody would see what you did, and that it would get pretty wild pretty quickly, I think.
And Molly, Catherine just asked about being able to see the spreadsheet and access that. And so I had just written into the chat that table view does give you a view of the full table. And at this point in time, I believe you can just you could drag and select all of those points, and you would be able to copy and paste that into your own spreadsheet. If you wanted students to work with a spreadsheet that we curated. So I guess, Mohammed, if you wanted to do that, add your own column and then upload it as one of my data sets, or in this case, your data set, you could manage and manipulate. There's also, as Molly's showing, the about. See the little CSV down at the bottom? That will take you to this quick little questionnaire, just so we know how you're planning to use it, and we can screen a little bit of that and submit that, and you'll get an email with the CSV file. So we do, we're working from Google Sheets when we create these, and that's how we upload to the data library. You can do the same thing. And Molly, if you want to go to my datasets or upload datasets, let's just do a quick show of, this is Molly's datasets. She has a lot. But as a free user, you can upload 5 datasets. That's 5 total in your entire free lifetime. You can, if you're a premium user, you can upload as many as you'd like. So this is another way to customize and bring in your own data sets or have students contribute. If you want to, why don't you go, you're gonna.
Well, I just opened one. I can, this is a data set that a student of mine we just uploaded this. I can actually create a plot here, and I'm just making something up here, and I can save this plot as a plot that is in my library. I'll give it a name, and I'm not going to name it now, and I can just click save as new, and then I'll be able to come back to it without having to create it again. I can also edit in my Google Sheet. So here's where I think, Mahmoud, that's what you were asking about, is could you edit it? But I can click on this edit here and edit my own data set, but this isn't in the library. So
Right.
So that's how you would do that.
And if you change your own data set, it's just yours. Other people don't have.
Nobody else has access, right? Nobody else has that data set. So.
Okay. Thanks for joining us, Catherine. And we'll stay on for just a few more minutes. If you have to go, we totally respect your time. We do want to give you a link for an evaluation. Whoops, paste.
We'd love it if you would take a moment just to fill out our little evaluation for this session before you go.
We lost them. We didn't do that soon enough, Molly.
Do we have the link in the chat?
I just put it in the chat.
Oh yeah, there it is. Okay. Yeah.
So hopefully just, explore around we do have the hello@tuvalabs.com. That goes out to all of the content specialists that can answer questions as they come up. And we have more webinars coming up that you can learn and explore different features. And so obviously you found out about this one, so stay in touch.
Yes, do.
So, 2 things.
Okay.
First, I actually teach in North Carolina.
Okay.
And we are trying to do a summer institute on how to teach using data.
Nice.
And I don't know if you'd be interested in being a part of it, or having a small session or a poster or a booth, but I could put you in contact with the conference coordinator. Perhaps it might be something you'd be interested in being a part of. It's in North Carolina. We're planning to do it in July. It will be the first.
It's gonna be hot.
No, in the mountains. It's in the
okay.
Are you near Asheville or?
Yeah, it's going to be near Asheville. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yes, that would be great. We'd love to hear. Is this a statewide science conference?
So what it is from my understanding, it's the first of its kind. I don't know if there's ever been a state teacher conference on how to teach data science. Okay. So their platform, I think, covers a wide variety, especially for the elementary and middle grades. We like platforms that are easy to use, self-contained, no installation, no IT maintenance required. And so I think it'll be a good fit.
Yeah,
And if
I'm
you're
so-
interested, you can contact me.
Yeah, I would say, Mama, the best thing to, Molly and I don't get to make all decisions. We're just, you know,
Oh, no, you do all
but-
the work. You do the good work. You can
but we
make-
might want to come. So if you send an email to hello@tuvalabs.com,
Mhm.
and, you know, just with a little bit of the contact information and what you just told us,
Right.
that will go to our professional development specialists, who I know we seem like we are, and we are, but we have,
You're the specialist. You
um,
did the thing. What?
and also to our to our big bosses who can make some of the decisions about what we go to and when. But I think that would be great. It sounds like a fun opportunity.
Yeah, let me talk to him. I'll convince him for you.
Yeah, that would be good.
All right. I'm gonna send it. I'm gonna send the email. We'll
Okay.
do.
Okay,
Yeah, I
We're
really
gonna look
enjoyed it.
forward.
I really enjoyed it. I think I like the feature that I think is the most impressive for me is sort of like that Desmos ability to put questions within the unit, the interface. And if I can see what students are actually typing,
Yeah.
then that gives me a hint of where I need to go to see if make sure people are paying attention. And so I don't have to have a separate worksheet.
Yeah.
Then this thing, and then they have to do like it's all contained. And so if I'm a teacher and I want something easy and quick to use, I can set it up here and then I can use it and I'm done. I'm good to go.
Great.
and it's good because it does reach across the disciplines, so math and science and even social science, because we have social science data sets. It's really apt for all of those disciplines.
All right. Well, great. We'll look forward to hearing from you, Mama. And
Okay.
I guess I've
Thank
been recording all of your questions, so we have it all preserved forever.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Thanks for joining and for your participation.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye.